Welcome everyone to Cal Poly Pomona's 17th annual Cyber Security and Awareness Fair. We'd like to thank our sponsors for supporting this event. I'd like to give a warm welcome and introduce our presenters from Robert Half and Protiviti. Jorge Marquez, who's the Senior Vice President, Robert Half. He's also the program leader for Robert Half's Apprenticeship and Workforce Innovation Solutions, which goals to develop a skilled, diverse, and inclusive professional workforce through apprenticeships launching in Southern California in the areas of cybersecurity and accounting, expanding into additional professional roles. He has over 15 years of advisory experience in assurance, tax, consulting, and business development in Southern California, including extensive experience cultivating executive level relationships. Cliff Maraschino, who's the Senior Manager of Security and Privacy at Protiviti. He's a member of their technology consulting practice, focusing on security and privacy. He also performs technical configuration reviews for logging technologies such as Elk, Splunk, Azure Sentinel, Logarithm, and QRadar. And Emily Stam, who is a senior consultant for emerging technologies at Protiviti, with experience in quantum computing, cryptography, and number theory. They'll be presenting on the topic quantum cryptography, SIEMs, and SOAR. Thank you everyone so much for joining us today. I hope you have enjoyed your time here at our event thus far. As we go through this presentation, please feel free to post questions in the chat session. All questions we answer during the Q&A portion. At the very end, thank you.
Thanks, Reed, and thank you everyone for joining today. It's such a pleasure to have you. We're very excited to be able to speak today and take you through the journey a little bit about our organization and some very hot topics in this space. So if as Reed mentioned, if there's any questions, please send them in the chat, and we'd be happy to answer them. So the next slide. Emily, yeah, that'd be great. Okay, here we go. So this is, as Reed mentioned, about myself. I actually am a part of Robert Half Government Services. We're a division of Protiviti Government Services. So our relationship, Robert Half's a Fortune 500 public company focused in providing talent solutions and consulting services. The talent solutions on the Roberts Half side, and the consulting with Protiviti, and with many of our clients, we provide blended solutions to our clients as well. And I don't know, Cliff, if you want to share a little bit about yourself, and Emily the same.
Yeah, sure. Hi, my name is Cliff Maraschino. Like mentioned before, I'm a senior manager in the Los Angeles office of Protiviti. And I'm really happy to be here as an alumni of Cal Poly Pomona. And so I'm happy to speak to current students and let you know what the future might provide after graduation. So thank you.
And I'm Emily Stam. I'm a senior consultant in Chicago at Protiviti, and I work on quantum computing as well as cryptography. And I'm very excited to be here and give this talk today.
Thanks, Emily. We go to the next slide. We have a video we're gonna share with you all. So you get to see a little bit more on our for Protiviti, our values of inclusion, innovation, and integrity. Looks like we're having an issue with the volume on the video. Guess we can't hear it. I think there's a setting, or we could just skip it too, for time purposes. We'll copy a link in the chat. So if you could drop that in, Emily, it's on the presentation. And if you want to check out the YouTube video later, you know, you're welcome to take a look. But you'll learn a little bit more about, you know, what we do around innovation, you know, inclusion and integrity. So next slide. You know, what do we do? You know, we help companies solve problems in finance, business operations, technology, transactions, governance, risk, and compliance. You know, as a couple of our subject matter experts here and in our technology consulting practice, you know, you'll learn a little bit more about, you know, a couple of our solution areas and what we're doing in this space. But, you know, overall, you know, again, global consulting organization, you know, we, you know, have you know, what we call, you know, extensive plans to grow and a strong focus on the future as an organization. And, you know, we're committed to doing whatever it takes to, you know, deliver confidence in a dynamic world. And, you know, again, our vision is to be the most trusted global consulting firm. You know, trust really speaks to the meaningful relationships we develop with our clients and with each other. And, you know, as far as our strategic drivers as an organization, you know, we expect to achieve, you know, many of our goals by focusing on, you know, some of those key areas, you know, attracting diverse top talent like you know, developing and encouraging high impact people, and appreciating exceptional work. And, you know, our work has not gone unnoticed. In fact, you know, we've been, you know, ranked and recognized as one of the best places to work by Fortune magazine, you know, Consulting magazine, and Glassdoor, just to name a few. Next slide. So a little bit about the work we do. You know, a little bit on our solutions. You know, you can see some of those areas I mentioned, you know, business performance improvement, digital, internal audit, financial advisory services, risk and compliance, technology consulting. You know, we cover the gambit of industries. You know, we have extensive work we do in financial services. We do a lot of work in the healthcare and life sciences, but, you know, we work all across various industries. As I mentioned, government services is where my focus is. You know, something about, you know, our solutions. You know, experience tells us that no one competency is not enough to solve today's complex business problems. So, you know, we focus and develop the expertise of our people in the solution areas listed, you know, above, so that this team, you know, with our clients could tailor a solution to fit the organizational needs. So with many of our clients, we're providing a variety of solutions that span numerous areas. And you can see here on our examples of projects, you know, cybersecurity is a significant solution area of ours. And Cliff can speak more to that as we move along. And Cliff, maybe do you have any thoughts you may want to share just on our security, on our cybersecurity practice?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you know, typically my focus has been, you know, on three things. I do cloud security assessment, so going into Fortune 500 companies, reviewing their architecture in the cloud environments and assessing it for, you know, security vulnerabilities or misconfigurations or other weaknesses against a compliant standard. Other than you know, cloud security assessments, I work on DevSecOps and also, as I mentioned later in the presentation, SimSolar. And you know, the DevSecOps is really cool because, you know, you get to help a company really mature their development practices, so you don't see too many vulnerabilities in either their native apps or their web-based applications. So it's fun to touch all the technologies and see the different best practices across multiple clients, and bring those best practices to your new clients, to sort of raise the bar, if you will, for everyone in the industry on their security practices. So this is why I love Protiviti. So
thank you, Cliff. That was great. So I'm not going to go through all our solution offerings, for purposes of this group. I think, Cliff really shared what's going to be the most relevant. So if we want to move to the next slide, we can go into just really what that growth path looks within Protiviti. And Cliff, maybe you can, talk about this a little bit, but kind of that as a senior manager, what that growth path might look like. So we start out as a intern, while you're in school. We have internship opportunities that we're actually hiring for next year, next summer, at this point. And once you join the firm, you begin as a consultant. Kind of that first couple of years developing those business and client service skills, and then into a senior consultant where you're getting more into that supervisory role, and really developing some of that technical expertise in the solution area that you're focused in. And then you go into a manager role, in developing further leadership skills, management skills, really becoming that technical, more of a technical expert. And then as you go into more that senior manager level, really leading engagements, and then you're really stepping up as a leader, and also helping develop as other leaders within the company as well, within our firm. For next step is the associate director. You're broadening your professional networks, becoming a subject matter expert. You're starting to get involved with some of the business development proposals, working to secure engagements, developing those really strong client relationships, and helping to support many of them. And at the director level, you're really, directing the teams. You're working with a group to support engagements, and to deliver on those engagements, as well as really helping with innovating business solutions, and providing additional value, within our firm and to our clients. And then, the next step is managing director, where you're leading our business and our organization in solution areas with clients, winning and engagements. So that's kind of what you would see from the kind of that intern all the way through managing director level. Next slide. This foundations, I'll just briefly touch on this. You have the opportunity to work with some of the world's leading companies, and as a consultant or intern, you collaborate to deliver these solutions to address complex business problems that these organizations face. And so this really kind of gives from a game board perspective what that might look like as you have those these foundations in working with our firm, from the summer internship all the way through starting your career. So we'll talk a little bit about our apprenticeship and workforce innovation program, and I'll be brief here. But next slide. We have seen, as many of you have looked into going into this profession, a significant skills gap in cybersecurity. There's, actually, ISC Squared found that 4.1 million more cybersecurity workers are needed on top of the current 2.8 million to close the gap. So what we've just developed are a way to foster professionals in cybersecurity of all different backgrounds through additional means, in addition to internships and hiring college graduates, but also earn while you learn type opportunities and apprenticeships. So next slide. So we've developed what we call an apprenticeship workforce innovation program. You're teaming with government, with colleges and universities such as Cal Poly Pomona, and then bringing in active students into our program, where you have the opportunity to go to school, but also earn a strong wage. You receive credit towards your degree for some of that work, as well as gain certifications and real life experience throughout college, not just in the summer, but for a 1 to 1.5 year program, in which once you complete, you actually receive a certificate of completion from the Department of Labor, as well as the California Department of Industrial Relations, that speaks to your completion of this work experience. So that's a little bit about our program. And I'll pass it on to Cliff from here.
Thank you very much. And like I said before, I'm gonna talk a little bit about SimSolar Technology. So why don't we just move on to the next slide? So, all right. So what is a SIM, right? A SIM is there's lots of components to a SIM, and basically, there's log collection, log aggregation, log correlation, alerting, and then all of this technology flows into the incident response process, where if you have an alert, there is an incident, then either a person, or now with the SOAR technology, there's an automated response to automatically respond to any incidences or alerts that may come up. So right here, you see an overview of what SimSolar capabilities are. So if we go to the next slide, SimSolar supports the incident response. And what do I mean by that, right? It's not just getting the logs, determining the alerts. It's about doing the investigation when you see an alert, and then also responding to that. Now, the incident response process is dictated through a number of frameworks out there, like ISO 27001 certification. PCI has incident response requirements. HIPAA, high trust, all of these have requirements of the incident response process. SIM and SOAR support that process through technologies. And you, as graduates and future members of the workforce, you will be the ones who are investigating or responding to those. So let's move on to the next slide. So as I said before, what constitutes really a SIM? It starts off with log sources, and log sources can really be anything, right? It can be a router, a firewall, a server, a switch. But nowadays, as I implement SimSolar technologies, I find that there's generally 3 different ways to get logs into SIM, right? The traditional, more syslog in CSAF format, where a firewall, an IDS, IPS router is sent to your centralized log service. Now, with the advent of API, you have many APIs that you can query directly and get logs. And then finally, there's also, the pub sub message or event hub message, which is basically, logs are sent to a publishing situation or a publishing source in like AWS, Google, or Azure. And then your SIM is a subscriber to that source, and it pulls down the logs as new logs are generated. Some pretty cool technology out there. Next slide. So once we get all the logs in, you'll see here as a typical alert screen, something that you as a security analyst or a incident response analyst, you'll be looking at this dashboard to identify alerts and respond to them, right? The SIM uses rules to generate these alerts, or it has user and entity behavior analytics, such as AI or machine learning, to understand what is normal traffic within your environment. Any abnormalities from normal traffic would then generate the alert, and then you have to respond to it. And when I say you have to respond to it, there's also a component where the SOAR comes in and has automated response and so forth. But let's go to the next slide and think of check out something else. When you see the incidents, right, you have to go on what is now known as threat hunting, right? So you see an incident, you see an alert, you look at all the logs, you try to establish like a hypothesis, you know, is this somebody trying to brute force your servers, or is this just a administrator who forgot his password a couple times, and now you're wondering if you know, he's just having a bad day or needs a few more cups of coffee. So you establish your hypothesis, you look at the logs, you see if there was a whole bunch of failed logins, but then eventually a successful login. You then determine if that, you try to use your heuristics and your experiences to understand if that really was a threat or if it was just something non-malicious. So that's the part of the triage and alerting and investigation. So I wanted to jump over to this last slide, which is actually what we helped a client do, right? So we had a client that needed assistance with the development of their security model and also, you know, to build out a proof of concept for SimSolar. And what we did is we came in, we understood their entire incident response process. We understand the people that they had. We did a quick evaluation of like, did the people have the skills that they need? Do they have the right processes? And then finally, we looked at the tools that were deployed. And the tool that was deployed was a homegrown tool. They had built it themselves, and it just really wasn't supporting the incident response process. So we came in and we suggested a commercial off-the-shelf product, Azure Sentinel, where they could grab all their logs, send it to the SIEM, and then at the same time, for very specific incidences, right, there can be an automated response, such as kick that server off the network, isolate that server so that you know, only an admin can use it, or automatically remediate a virus if it got infected. So we did all those things, but it assisted them in a larger project. It assisted them in you know, meeting their ISO 27001 compliance. It assisted with their further projects of deploying this SimSolar solution across multiple divisions. And, you know, it was a win-win for both of us, where we were able to show our technical expertise, help the client with their SimSolar deployment, and at the same time, further push it out to the rest of the division. So this is a client credential that I just wanted to share with you. And I'll be happy to chat with you, any questions at the end, but I'm going to pass it over to Emily, and she'll go from there.
All right, thanks, Cliff. And I'm Emily Stam, so I'll be talking about quantum secure cryptography. And that's it can be a complex subject, so we'll try to break it down and first review what is cryptography and what is quantum computing. So what is cryptography? Cryptography, from the Greek kryptos, meaning hidden or secret, and graphen, meaning to write, literally translates to secret writing. And cryptography has existed in different forms for thousands of years, such as the Caesar shift 2,000 years ago, which was rumored that Caesar would use this to communicate with his army. And basically, it's just shifting every letter over by a certain amount. And as years went on, things got more complicated. We have, for instance, the Lorenz cipher machine that was used by the German army in World War II. And that's also pictured on the left. And to today, where cryptography means secure communication in the presence of third parties. And today, cryptography provides a lot more than just confidentiality, which is what a lot of the older cryptography algorithms did. It was all about keeping the message secret. It also provides authentication, which is making sure who you're talking to is really who you think you're talking to. And then integrity, which is making sure that the information that is getting passed isn't getting altered. So that's an overview of what cryptography is. And there are different types of cryptography, a couple main branches. And one of these main branches is called public key cryptography. So public key cryptography is where you have a public key that's used to encrypt and a private key that's used to decrypt. And these are different. So you take some message, you encrypt it with a public key, and then only the person who has the private key can decrypt it and read that message. And all of the algorithms I mentioned before were not public key cryptography. They're another type called symmetric. And with symmetric, you have to have some pre-established information. But with public key cryptography, you actually don't have to have that pre-established information. So public key cryptography didn't exist until the 1970s, actually. And it's really this amazing ability, because if you think about it, if you're in a room full of people and you see someone across the room, you can have an encrypted conversation with them without knowing them beforehand, without exchanging any glances, anything. You can just start talking to them and no one else in that room will be able to know what you're talking about. So that's how public key cryptography works. And it's actually based on very hard math problems. So if you're able to solve the math problem, then you're able to break the cryptography. And one such hard math problem is factoring. So factoring is a problem where you have one number and you try to break it into 2 primes. So that's very hard to do. But if you can do that, you're able to break cryptography algorithms like RSA. So now, how does quantum computing factor in? So switching gears, very briefly, quantum computing is this new type of computation that's based on quantum physics. So it uses all these quantum properties to solve problems that our current computers cannot or cannot solve efficiently. And one problem that it's particularly good at is factoring. So a quantum computer can efficiently factor, whereas a classical computer cannot. So it turns out that quantum computers can actually solve all of the problems that our current public key cryptography is based off of. So once we have a large enough quantum computer, it will be able to break all of our cryptography. So there's a very clear threat to our cryptography that we need to address. So what do we do about this? The solution is to replace our cryptography. So replace our current public key cryptography with quantum secure cryptography. And there are 2 main types of quantum secure cryptography. The first is quantum cryptography, and this is actually based on quantum physics. So it has security, actual provable security, and it's using, for instance, photons to send them across an optical link. And there's practicality issues with this, and also issues with easily integrating it into systems. So quantum cryptography, while it will be used, it will definitely have its use cases, it's not likely to be a widely used solution. So the other solution is post-quantum cryptography. And post-quantum cryptography is exactly like our current cryptography, except it's just based on harder math problems. So it's a more practical solution than the quantum cryptography. And right now there's actually a competition with the National Institutes of Standards and Technology, or NIST. They're having a competition to determine the new post-quantum cryptography algorithm that will be standardized and replace our old standards. So it's a very exciting time for cryptography. If you think about it, we have these algorithms that we've been using for 40, 50 years, and now suddenly we're trying to replace them with all these newer algorithms with more intricate mathematics. So if you're interested, you can just Google NIST post-quantum cryptography, and you can find all of the algorithms there. It's very interesting, especially if you love math. Definitely take a look through all of those. And lastly, I wanted to talk about how Protiviti comes in, where they come in. And Protiviti does a few things that involve quantum and post-quantum cryptography. The first with post-quantum cryptography is helping companies switch to quantum secure algorithms. So assessing their cryptography, giving them advice, helping them switch to these more secure algorithms, which is actually very difficult task. It might sound easy, but it can actually be very difficult to switch your cryptography. And that's another thing that Protiviti helps with is crypto agility. So making it easier for companies to switch between algorithms, which is really important. We also do work with quantum computing, proof of concepts, and as well as education advisement, holding workshops, giving talks, so that people can learn more about quantum computing and quantum secure cryptography. And with that, I'll turn it over.
Thank you, thank you, everyone, for attending today. And thank you to our guest speakers. Your presentation was very insightful. Also, we hope you learned a lot from this session, and we appreciate your engagement. If you have any questions, please ask, and we will be happy to help you find an answer.
There seems to be a couple questions on the Hoover app who have not been answered yet. So Alex asked, I actually know very little about quantum stuff in general. How does it work? There was a big scare about it a while ago, but apparently it's not really as bad as it seems. What happened to it?
Sorry, could you repeat that question? It was a little...
Sorry, there's a lot of background noise around that. Alex asked,
no
I actually know very little about quantum stuff in general. How does it work? There was a big scare about it a while ago, but apparently it's not as bad as it seems. What happened to it?
Yeah, so quantum computing, it's definitely a lot to get into describing how it works. But at the fundamental level, it uses qubits or quantum bits, which can be any combination of 0 and 1 instead of just 0 or just 1. And it also uses these other quantum phenomenon like entanglement, which is where two of the qubits cannot be described independently of each other. And these properties allow you to do computation in just this completely new way. It's really just so different from classical computation, but it allows you to harness the power of quantum computing instead of fighting against it as we have chips that are smaller and smaller. And right now they're up to about 100 qubits. It's hard to say because it's a little bit more complicated than just saying the number of qubits. There's things like how good are the qubits, how connected are they, but could say about 100 qubits now. We need 2,500 to start cracking cryptography. But IBM is estimating that by 2023, they'll have 1,000. So it's definitely coming. It's not something that has gone away, but maybe there's been less news about it recently.
Okay. And Derek also asked, how long is it expected before quantum computers are able to decrypt all of our keys?
That's a great question. And depending on who you ask, they have very different estimates. Some people say it could be 3 years. Some people say it could be 30 years. I think 5 to 10 years is what a lot of people say. I think it's very difficult, and we'll know more in the next year or two based on how IBM and all these other companies do that are predicting 1,000 qubits. And because 100 to 1,000, that's a huge leap. And if they can do that, then I imagine that the next leap will be also pretty great. But the other problem is that adversaries are already storing our encrypted information so that once a quantum computer that's sufficiently powerful does exist, they'll use it to decrypt that information. So even though quantum computers don't exist now, it's already very important to start using quantum secure cryptography.
Thank you. And one last question. Samuel asked, where can we apply for the internship program?
Oh, questions on the internship program. You can email me actually your information, and then I can send you the link to our internship program on our Protiviti website. And I'll drop my email address in the chat.
That's all the questions that we have. Thank you.
Okay, please not forget to check out our water bottle and laptop sticker contest we're giving away. No starch press, $20 ebook vouchers. Thank you again and have a wonderful day.
Bye now.
Thank you.